You have 3 months, 2 months, and now 1 month to prepare for the JLPT. What would you do? Well, here's what I wouldn't do. I kind of knew this would happen, but nonetheless, this has given me such great learnings, and I'm here to share 3 of them with you. But before that, what even is JLPT? So it's the Japanese language proficiency test. You'll see a lot of YouTube videos about this, but it helps you understand where you're at in your Japanese learning journey. And number 2 is helpful in your job and college applications, and it's just a bonus point in your CV if you want that level of certification. And I think before giving this exam, the levels are from N5, which is beginner, to N1, which is completely advanced. So I was at N4, I'd say, in terms of how the test goes, and I had signed up for the N2 test. So there was already large gap to cross, and I think I studied for about 1.5 months, and these were my results. So I got a 10 in vocab and grammar, 10 in reading comprehension, and 29 in listening, which I think I was already pretty decent at. Considering where I started from, these are pretty okay, and there's a long way to go. And here are the 3 things I would change in my preparation as a self-taught Japanese learner. Number 1, you cannot cram a language. But luckily, you don't need to be fluent in order to pass a JLPT, in my opinion. You just gotta know how to play the game. And that's what I'm going to talk about, is how I learned the rules of the game, at least towards the end of my preparation. So the JLPT has a both sectional cutoff and an overall cutoff you need to clear in order to pass the exam. And here's a brief view of what the sections look like from N1 to N5. And you can see that the JLPT does not test you on speaking skills, but rather your listening and reading skills, which involve, again, vocab and grammar knowledge. So it's not getting you to 100% fluency, right? And the second aspect is there's no particular syllabus for the JLPT. You do see patterns in terms of content that is regularly tested, or like themes that might be regularly tested, but no such specified content. And while that is unpredictable, what we can know beforehand are the type of questions that will be asked in the JLPT. And once you identify the type of questions, you'll be able to get strategies on how to solve them, even if you don't understand the question or the options word by word. And even if you're missing a piece of that puzzle, you can deduce the answer through various strategies like elimination and reading strategies, etc. So the first aspect of understanding the test is definitely going through your country's JLPT site. For India, it was MOSAI. So going through, number 1, the test structure, number 2, sample questions that are available there and on sites like JLPT Sensei also, and then noting down each type of question that you come across. You can also watch a lot of YouTube videos explaining the test structure and strategies for each type of question. The second part of it is understanding the patterns and understanding how you can manage your time effectively, because the JLPT is structured such that you're consistently running out of time and it requires immense amount of speed, and within that speed you don't want to be making silly mistakes that cost you your marks, right? Here's a small graph on time management and your attention span and how they relate to each other. There are some great resources that I've found, and I'll link them down below. I think one more thing that I would like to focus on would have been more intensive reading at one stretch for a longer duration, because the JLPT leaves you exhausted. After all, you're being exposed to a non-native language, and that too at a higher level than what you already might be at, right? So you do need to increase your attention span, and again, that takes a lot of time and effort. And coming to my second point, time. So my second point is, don't waste time on substitute resources. Just start testing yourself immediately. And here are a few reasons why they're important, right? Number 1, I had 1.5 months to prepare, and that was again a large part due to my procrastination and me just dilly-dallying, right? So lack of time. Number 2, once you start testing yourself and once you start understanding the pattern of questions, you know what to expect, and you also know where you are right now, because if you know where you are right now and where you have to be, you'll know how much gap you have to cover, and you start preparing accordingly. And number 3, exposure therapy. So now that you directly attack it, it gets you into the zone, and it allows you to have more intense and more productive practice, so that you're in the mode for the test rather than being in the mode for something else, and as a result of that, being in the mode for the test. So I'll give you an example, right? Instead of starting off with the test structure, instead of starting off with what the reading question passages actually look like, what is being asked, I just started reading a lot of manga and looking for a lot of blogs in Japanese, because I had the mindset that, okay, if I just read a lot of Japanese, then maybe I'll be able to do the test very easily. But as I said before, it's not passage dependent, but it's more questions dependent. So you need to know how you have to be able to comprehend that passage, and you need to transition from passive reading to active reading, right? Because you do need information retrieval. So that activity might have helped me to get in the zone and practice a bit for a day or two, but I ended up spending 2 weeks on that, and let's say the return on investment was pretty low. Rather, here are the resources that I shifted to post understanding that I do need to attack the JLPT head on. So number one, JLPT Sensei. So I used this a lot for my reading comprehension, and they do have a lot of questions on vocab and grammar also, but I mainly did all my medium, long and short passages from there because they're a good representation of what comes on the test. Number two, I downloaded the JLPT app for practice questions and mock questions, and this is paid if you want to unlock the entire set of questions, but I think for the amount of tests that you get, it is a pretty good bargain considering I'll have to take the test again. The second one that I used were JLPT YouTube channels. So a few of them written here, like Japanese with Yuka, Nihongo no Mori, Nihongo lessons with Yuko. So all of these really helped me in identifying the test patterns and also understanding how I can solve for each type of question. So for example, if I am reading a particular question, how do I apply the elimination method? Number two, if it's a question about what the core idea of the passage is, where can I usually find it? Maybe towards the end or the beginning. So, and if it's a detailed question, I must go to that part of the passage and then read everything around it. So these YouTube channels have really helped me strategize for the test, and this video particularly helped me in understanding N2 grammar. So that's what I use. And then the fourth resource that I used was Obenkyo for understanding kanji and remembering different kanji. And the good thing about it is that the kanji are put together at an N1 to N5 level, so you can segregate as per your JLPT requirements as well. And that's a good segue into my third learning, which is you cannot escape kanji, but here's the key to unlocking it. So here's why you can't escape kanji, right? It's everywhere, especially if you're attempting the N2 exam. There's a whole section dedicated to kanji under the vocab, and secondly, within the reading section, there is no furigana and no one's coming to save you there. So my earlier strategy of I don't need kanji did not work here. And another thing is that kanji is something that you cannot deduce, in most cases at least, right? The individual kanjis. So you do need to put an effort at memorizing them in whatever way that helps you. But luckily through this exercise I was able to figure out the logic behind kanji, and while it seems crazy that 10,000 kanji can have some logic behind them, here's a video I made about it recently. Kanji is often forced on people through rote memorization, even though there is a pattern hidden underneath, and my video about it talks in depth regarding how you can particularly understand and see these patterns. But here's a short example of the same. So kanji can be read as onyomi or kunyomi. Those are the two types of readings that they can have, and they depend on where the kanji appear. So onyomi is when the kanji appears with another kanji, and kunyomi is when the kanji appears with hiragana. So once you have that knowledge, you can apply it to seeing the same kanji in different contexts, right? Like taberu is with hiragana, so the kanji for eating becomes tabe. But if it's with another kanji, for example shokuhin, which is food items, right? So you know that with other kanji it's pronounced as shoku. So if you see it with another kanji that is not hin or the goods kanji, then you can see like shokudo, then you know it's a canteen because food and do. But one key thing that you see here is that shoku from shokudo and shoku from shokihin come from the same kanji, pronounced the same way as the onyomi. So the onyomi often stays consistent across compound kanji, and they often stay consistent across the hiragana kanji. So that's a good way in to identify how to read words that you know by the sound or you know by the hiragana but you don't know by the kanji, and it's a good way to also understand what two compound kanji might mean, what one compound kanji might mean when you just know what the individual kanji of that block particularly mean, right? I hope I realized that a bit earlier, but that I think comes with exploration and more intensive focus, which again takes time as a self-taught learner. So in conclusion, I was on the right track in the end, but as most self-learners do, I wasted a lot of time on finding the right method and the right resources, and that distracted me from my final goal, right, which is passing the JLPT. But at the same time, I'm really glad I got this experience because it got me to this kanji revelation and made me find my desire to read more, to improve, and to return to language learning anew. So I think my last advice to my future self as well would be to understand the test first. Number 2, break it into parts. And number 3, don't use roundabout ways to reach it if you're short on time. Just attack it at face value. But yes, it was the most fun I had while taking a test, and I'll probably be doing it again this year. So I'll be applying all the tips I just shared and incorporating JLPT prep in my daily routine with Anki and all the mentioned resources. But let me know what you think about it and your JLPT experience if you tried it out in the comments below. I'm excited to hear about it.